I want to share a little bit about relationship with God. Because often what happens is our relationship with God is only as strong as our ability to communicate with Him. And communicating with Him is not just telling Him our problems or telling Him our needs, but the primary part of communicating with God is actually to listen to God. Deuteronomy says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, mind, and soul." And before God ever tells us to do anything, even before He tells us to love Him, He tells us to hear Him. And I want to propose to you that hearing Him and listening to Him is what empowers us to love Him and to obey Him. And so if people don't hear Him, they're not strengthened on the inside to then obey Him on the outside. And there's many hindrances that people have, that I have had, that you may have had, that you have, whatever I may, things that we work through, where we actually remove the things that are hindering us from hearing God. I'll give you some just to think about. Fear and worry will cause our spiritual ears to be deaf and our spiritual eyes to be blind. Unforgiveness will harden our hearts, and we'll be hardened to the point where we're not tender or receptive to the voice of God. A person who will not hear correction probably will not have direction. When we come to God with a religious preconceived notion of what He says or what He doesn't say or what He will say, what He won't say, we can't hear Him. If we do not believe what Jesus has said to us in the past, we will not hear what He is saying to us in the present. A huge part of the reason that people presently have a hard time hearing God's voice is because of a false teaching that declares that God is no longer speaking today or God is no longer healing people today. That's called cessationism, and it's not true. The reality is that God is alive and He is speaking, He is healing, He is delivering, and He still is powerful, and He is still seated on the throne. Another reason that people struggle to hear God is the simple fact of unbelief. People say, "Oh, I don't hear God." Well, no, the reality is you do hear God, you're just not paying attention to Him. Because Jesus said, "You are His sheep and you hear His voice." So either Jesus' word is true, or He's a liar, or our experience is not consistent with the truth. And if our experience is not consistent with the truth, then we need to ask God to forgive us, and we need to pay closer attention to Him and hear Him. Unconfessed sin causes shame, and shame causes people to run from God instead of to Him. And unresolved conflict creates confusion. So someone who has unresolved conflicts will have confusion and will struggle to hear God, and someone who has shame will run from God, which will also make it hard to hear from God. So wherever you are in your life, just know that God loves you, and He wants to speak to you, and He wants you to know Him. And you know Him as you listen to Him and as you obey Him.